Hey everybody, welcome to EIS Live. Man, so excited today. We have some awesome guests. And of course, to start things off, we have my awesome co-hosts, Matt and Vanessa. So we're going to bring them right in. There they are.
Woo!
Hi,
Bill?
Big bomb right behind us there. EIS Live. It's
Money ready to go, baby. Monday's ready to go.
Yep, ready to go. Loving it. So I have a couple that I've been working with over, I think we talked about last night, maybe 3 to 4 years. And I had a chat with them last week, and I was so excited about the things that they were sharing with me that I said, man, I don't have any for Monday because I had shifted the schedule around, and I just happened to need somebody for Monday. I said, would you mind doing it, And they graciously accepted and got a little nervous about that. And but their story is just everybody, of course, has a testimony, and every one of them is powerful. But their story is just they have a very deep background in terms of their childhood experiences and growing up, and we talk a lot about childhood trauma and trauma triggers and all that kind of stuff. And these guys, I think the exemplary thing about it is they've really that when they're going to share that story about how we started working on those things. But the thing that really impacted me the most is how they've turned all that around and have become really good at marriage. Doesn't mean that they're done, that they're perfect, they got everything down, but they got some of the key stuff down that we all need to, grow into and to learn if we're going to have a lasting marriage. So I'm going to invite them to hop on right now. So you ready, guys? Come on in.
Yay! Hi,
guys.
Hello,
good
guys.
to see you. Thank you for having us.
It's really good to have you guys here. And again, thank you for on short notice, being willing to hop on. I know it's kind of frightening in the beginning. It's like, what? Why am I doing that? But you guys have also shared, was it at least once, maybe twice, at a couple of events that we've had in the past?
Yeah. And it was awesome. So today's gonna be awesome.
Yeah. And so we get an even broader audience now, hopefully, that we'll have thousands on today looking in. So
that's right. Don't make me nervous, Bill.
it's like one big FaceTime. That's how I have to do it. I was nervous my first time around, and now here I am co-hosting. So it's okay.
There you go.
Yeah, now she's a veteran. And I did forget to mention that Vanessa, of course, is my media czar. So she takes care of all of my Instagram stuff and putting all those pieces together that you see to promote stuff. Awesome. So thank you for that.
You do great.
But I thought a way to start today is, because when we were talking about it last night, and by the way, we had a little tech chat, which normally takes about 5 minutes last night, that turned into 45 minutes. I wish we could have recorded that. We could have just played it.
You're supposed to.
Because there was just so much great stuff, But one of the things that Jaslyn had said last night was that, at the onset, because I always ask people and I'm going to ask you to share that in a minute so you can get ready to start sharing in a moment, is how you got connected with EIS and, what was life like before and kind of leading up to taking that step to come into EIS. And one of the things that you said was that, well, let's just fix up Edwin. And so everything is going to be great after that.
Yep.
And I'll let you start from there. Tell like a bit of your story.
Yeah, that's exactly what I thought. I mean, to be honest, I knew that we had communication issues. I mean, I don't want to say that we had a really bad relationship, but also like every other relationship, we weren't perfect either. And we knew that, right? But we didn't have, I guess, an exemplary couple to look at. So what we thought was communication, we were like, oh, this is just how we communicate, and that's just how it goes. So we're communicating, right? And then getting to be around the community and the team, it was like, oh, okay, so we don't know how to communicate. It was like, it just started getting haywire. And I was like, well, I'm a choleric. So I always think I'm right, or thought I'm right. I've
No, you always know you're right.
Right, which is even worse.
Big difference.
So I was like, you guys need to check him. You need to check him, like talk to him, fix him up. I don't know. And then we'll be great. And then it was like the everything just flipped. And I was like, oh my God, I'm the one that screwed up. Like, oh, it's me with all the baggage. Obviously, we both had our share of baggage. But I didn't realize I had so much going on because I was just in denial because nothing was wrong with me, right? Nothing was wrong. So, being able to hear everybody going through the breakthroughs and talking about EIS and knowing that we needed help with our communication because we had none. We had none, especially having to build something together as far as the business, because we were so used to doing everything separately, right? He goes to work, I go to work, do my own thing. We come home, we're also both melancholy, so we do our own thing. Like, you go that way, I go this way, we come together, hi, have a little chat, and then, all right, go ahead, we do our own thing. So then having to build something together, we just didn't know how to talk about things. And most of the time, we were saying the same thing, we just didn't hear or understand each other. And it was just, it created an argument for like no reason, so.
So we used to use like the favorite word, right? Fine. Like, oh yeah, we're fine. Even though we were arguing and not really communicating right, we thought we were fine because for us, and that's what it is. That's what couples do, and you go through the process and you're okay. So we thought we were okay until thankfully, Marlon and Stephanie, one time had a conversation with us and they encouraged us to work with Henry and Alessandra. And, we were definitely always talking to them. They helped us so much. And today, told us to encourage us to go ahead and have a sit down with Bill. And that's how everything started.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Thank you guys for sharing. I would love to know what are your temperaments down the line, if you guys can.
So I am in inclusion. I am a choleric. In control, I am a melancholy, and in affection, I'm a sanguine.
Wow.
In inclusion and in control, I'm a melancholy, and I'm a sanguine.
In affection.
In affection. So that's a really good mix right there.
That's some mix. Now, for you guys, like, how long were you guys together prior to going to Bill and EIS?
So we started with Bill, 3 years ago. My math.
2 years plus, yeah.
Right, I can't do math without a calculator. 10. So we were together about 7 years before we met Bill.
Wow. Now, Jaslyn, when you went to Bill and you talk about how you went and it was like, fix Edwin, and it was like, oh smokes, like I gotta fix some stuff. Did that kind of hit you right away? Were you open-minded to that right away, or did it kind of take some, like, I guess, peeling away the layers of the onion to, a few sessions to kind of get to that point yourself? Like, how did that ended up, transpiring?
Open-minded to that. I can't tell you yes or no because I was just so fix him, do something, So I guess I was open-minded to having someone come in and help us. So I was definitely open to that because Edwin and I always had this mentality that we were in it for life, no matter what. We were always in our relationship, like even before everything, we were like, if we, at that time, we had recently gotten engaged, like probably at that time, like right then and there, we had just gotten engaged. So we were like, all right, divorce is off the table, like whatever it is, we're going to work through it. So to have someone mediate and come in between, I was like, all right, we're definitely open for this because we can't go backwards. We can only improve. So it was definitely open for it. And how long did it take me? It didn't take long because of the baggage that I uncovered that I didn't even know was there. And it was just, we started off, we met Bill, I think the first time together, just kind of getting to know him. And then he split us up right away. And he had me journal. And I think it was the very first time. And when I was journaling, there were certain things that I was writing about, and I wrote pages and pages and pages and pages. He was like, write everything down that hurts you. And I was like, at first I was like, what hurts me? Like, you know, like I'm like, I have nothing, like nothing comes to mind. And then when I started writing, the floodgates opened. And I was like, oh my gosh, why is this hurting me so much? And I couldn't stop crying for like 3 days. I couldn't stop crying because I just couldn't stop writing. And there was so much that I had uncovered that was outside of Edwin, that came from like when I was young. So to say, you know, was I open to change? I was open to working on our relationship, but then once I started that first time of journaling, I came to Bill and I was like, I don't know what just happened. Like I was bawling for like 3 days straight and I can't compose myself. So I was like, I need help. So it went from like 0 to 100 real quick for me.
Wow.
And just to throw something in, you know, when they came and when they mentioned they didn't have any communication, what they really had was trauma triggering all over the place.
Yeah.
You know, because none of their needs were being met as far as temperament. Matt, like you asked, like, what's the temperament needs? And Edwin will get into another facet of that later on, like we talked about last night, Edwin, about needs not being met, right?
Yeah.
But as sanguines in affection, you know, being independent, being choleric, being melancholy, you're going to try to get your needs met your way. Of course, nobody else knows about that kind of a thing. It's just and that's just never going to work. And as long as you just keep traveling down that path, which is what they were doing, you know, they're just not going to. It's just going to increase the dysfunction. It's going to increase the codependency, the anger between them, and the lack of communication. Just because they're always, somebody has to win, for example. You know, stuff like that. You know, I have to be heard. It doesn't matter what you have to say. It's just about me being heard. You know, things like that. So I think they were super ready, like to take the plug out of the top of the volcano when, you know, we actually started doing the journaling.
Yeah.
Yeah. 100%. I agree with that. That's even for me, you know, I know that she's saying, it sounds like she was the only one working in everything, but definitely I had a lot that I needed to work on. Like Bill just said, you know, I started journaling myself too, and it was definitely unbelievable, the things that I started going back, and you know, it just like I always was like I was walking around with a mirror, you know, definitely always seeing myself and the things that I was doing that was affecting my life, affecting my wife's life, and everybody around me, you know, and being a sanguine in affection, you know, like Bill just said, it's easy to find ways to cover that, you know, and feel good, you know, I'm good, I'm fine. But writing those things down definitely showed me the things that I needed to work on.
Wow.
And we get into a little bit of what that was.
Yeah, no, definitely. One thing that I did want to share is that journaling, right away from the beginning, I realized how one of the things that affect me the most that I didn't realize all my life was I'm originally from the Dominican Republic, and my parents, when I was 9, they came to the United States. So I was 9, you know, my parents left for 5 years. They used to visit, you know, whenever they could for, you know, for like a week or so. And it was like I was living from different houses. Some of them were family. We even live, like my brother and I live at a, we call them family, but it's neighbors, you know, in their house for a little bit. And, you know, realizing all of that, like I never forget when that day my mom they were in the car and she was looking back at me, you know, me being 9, writing this down. It was like, man, I'm a man right now. How is this hurting? But it's because it was deep in there. Something was deep in there that I needed to really, you know, speak about it, and journaling that helped me big time. And, you know, as well as my brother, you know, he was a teenager, you know, he's almost 5 years older than me. So, you know, he was definitely doing different things. I was 9, so I felt alone all the time. I felt alone. So with that being said, you know, all my life I thought like, oh yeah, people just eventually gonna leave. You know, that was something that was engraved in me. Like people eventually just gonna leave. So Jaslyn, yeah, she loved me, I love her, but eventually she's gonna leave. That's how life is.
Yeah.
You know, so all of that played a big time, a big time in the things that we were going through, you know, as well as because of that, I needed to learn how to lay down my life for my wife. That was one thing that Bill worked a lot with me because I didn't know what that looked like. You know, I didn't know what that looked like. I just saw like, hey, you know, you're my girlfriend and then you my wife and that's it. You're mine. You know, we got to do what we got to do.
Yeah.
And really get into, you know, getting in the word and, you know, definitely getting to know God and all of that great stuff is what allowed me to understand what laying down my life for my wife is, you know. And again, those childhood moments that also played in my life, you know, like one thing I can share right away too is that being a kid and also living in different houses, different scenarios, different habits, you know, porn and things along those lines was a normal thing, you know, and growing up with that also affected a lot. You know, it definitely did affect it a lot in our relationship, but we didn't know that. We didn't know that because, like I said at the beginning, we thought that was something just normal. You know, it's like, okay, that's what humans do, you know. So I know I went out a little bit, but definitely wanted to share what was on my heart with that.
No, thank you so much.
Matt, you got something?
I was just Edwin, like, thanks so much, man, for sharing that. I mean, that's, you know, the things that, you know, so when it came to independence, did that kind of teach you to be so independent growing up because you kind of had to survive on your own? And kind of how did that impact your relationship with Jocelyn as you guys progressed? Was that something that, you know, I guess in terms of communication on a deep level and how intertwined that has to be when you guys obviously progress towards marriage, was that something that you had to work on being so independent your entire life, kind of on your own? You know, was that something that came naturally to you to be able to communicate really well with Jocelyn, or was that something that, you know, was a journey for you?
Yeah, that was a journey, and that was the biggest journey, you know, communicating, because it was like, okay, I grew up like that, so now I know she's gonna leave. I know this is, anything can happen. So what does it matter? Why argue? Why go into, you know, big discussions about things? Let's just leave it alone and things are gonna happen how they need to happen. And I definitely didn't want to communicate. Like whenever there was something, I remember like when we first started together, one of the things I used to like preach to her all the time was, hey, we're gonna work through everything, but please no drama. That was the one word I always said: no drama, no drama. You know, what do you mean no drama? You know, we need to work through things and you know, working through the journey and realizing like, okay, we need to be able to get to a point to speak about things and sit down and understand where we each other, you know, need to meet, you know, our needs. And I just really thought that it was just, you know, you need to, you know, maybe you need to do everything that I need to do. I'm gonna work. Another thing I said, you know, my goal is to like eventually, you know, make the money of the house so you don't have to, I mean, so you don't have to work, but then so you can do everything else, you know, that a housewife's supposed to do.
Yeah, so like independence for both of us was huge, especially in the Dominican culture, because I'm also from the Dominican culture. Independence is huge, especially for men and the machismo, you know. So, and both of us being melancholy and me being a choleric, we're both also extremely independent as well. So, but at the same time, it came tough because it was like, all right, you do your thing, I do my thing, but I want you to do it my way, and he wants me to do it his way. So it was like a pitfall for disaster. It was like, I want to do my own thing, but you got to do it the way I want to do it, you know, or the way I want it done. Wow. So it was tough. And when he said like no drama, if we had something to talk about, you know, we were that independent that it was like, no, you know, whatever, we couldn't communicate because it was so me. him. And there was that drive that didn't allow us to get in there. And then literally, like, we would just kind of walk away and we'd just sweep things under the rug. And that was it. And then, but the thing is that we still had that, we're going to work through it no matter what. But our working through it was just leave it alone and keep going.
Yeah.
Yeah, you didn't know what you were in for when it came to actually working through stuff. So I want to point out too that these guys also entered into the purity covenant when we started getting together. And that really had, I think in your case, just like an extra amount of impact, especially Jaslyn for you, because I want you to start sharing a little bit about what started to be uncovered when you started doing your journaling exercise. And I know it might get emotional here, but it's super important. You've shared this before, but when we start hearing these things and especially tied into the purity covenant and the background that you came from, how important that was, because when we talk about communication, we understand that we don't have emotional intimacy, right? So if couples are using the sexual relationship as intimacy, it usually supplants emotional intimacy. It really takes it away. And so we don't have or give ourselves the opportunity to create that place, right? So how are we going to communicate if we're not really intimate with one another? And so I think, the process for you guys of doing the journaling, uncovering the stuff from the past, entering into that part of the process of, not having sex anymore and kind of forcing yourselves to understand each other more, communicate more, and get to the root issues of things. And again, in your case, I think that purity covenant set the stage for that. Because one thing that you didn't say in the beginning, when we said like you didn't know who you were, but last night we talked about it in terms of you also didn't know your value.
Right.
Not just knowing who you were, like what's my personality like kind of a thing, but also, my validity as a human being, like what I'm carrying into this world.
Yeah, I definitely didn't know my worth. I never knew that was a thing, that I had worth, or that, like, what is that terminology? What is that? And going into the journaling, and I think I'm gonna be okay and not get emotional, hopefully. But it uncovered things that I didn't know occurred to me. And it was like, well, what do you mean it uncovered things that didn't even make sense, like, to me? Like, what do you mean you don't know that it happened to you? You wrote it down, right? It's like, yeah, I wrote it down. But there were a lot of things that happened to me when I was a child, as far as sexual abuse, that I didn't know was sexual abuse. And it began at a very young age, with multiple parties, and I didn't know what it was, and I would write it down, and I'm just like, but why does this hurt so much? Why does this hurt so much? Like, why am I crying? Like, why is this still affecting me? Like, I'm in my 20s. This happened when I was, a little kid. Like, why is this bothering me? Like, I thought I partook in these activities because I was, that's what I was taught to believe, right? That I engaged in these activities. And it wasn't that way. And I didn't know what. Okay. I didn't know what sexual molestation was. So I was like, all right, Bill, I don't understand. Like, how do I not know what happened to me? Right? How do I not know what occurred? Like, that doesn't make sense to me. He's like, no, that's sexual abuse. And he made me watch a documentary, and I remember watching it. And in the documentary, there were multiple people, and they also said that they didn't know it occurred. So I was like, oh my God, I'm not the only one, right? So worth, there was no worth. It was like, for me, growing up, since I was exposed to such things at such a young age, and nobody knew, right? To this day, like, honestly, my family doesn't know that I've been through that. My parents don't know. Nobody knows. But how would they know? I didn't even know, right? So I didn't know it was something I had to talk about, because again, I thought it was something that I was convinced that I was voluntarily engaging in these actions, and I wasn't, because if I did, it wouldn't hurt me, right? It wouldn't affect me. And I was a kid. I didn't know about these things, right? So having gone through that, and having gone through that journaling, that's exactly why I was so open, because I didn't know all this stuff had happened. So worth, it was like, well, what worth? What do you mean? So for me, and if you heard Edwin say before, like, oh, you're my girlfriend, you're my wife, well, not wife at the time, right? He was like, you're my girlfriend, or you're mine. That's literally what it was. It was like I was territory, and I'm not putting blame on him or saying that he thought I was territory, that he put me in that position. That's what I always thought myself to be, because I was always put in that position. So I thought that I was here to perform for men, and I always I thought that was what I was here for. And if I didn't do that, then I wasn't loved, right? So I didn't know that what was being a woman truly about. So Edwin, having, when we got engaged and we met with Bill, and we did the purity covenant, for some reason, I don't know why, I felt so relieved and happy to engage in such a thing. And then I heard him in the room cry about it, and I was so confused. I was like, why is this hurting him so much? But going through the journey and going through the pain, and learning about each other's needs, as a person, as a man, as a woman, I understood after a while why he cried and why I was so happy, and why certain things made me uncomfortable, and I was always so comfortable with that one, right? But then it was like, why do certain things make me uncomfortable with the person that I'm most comfortable with? And I never knew why. And it was uncovering these layers, that made me realize why I was so uncomfortable with a lot of things, and around certain people and around certain things. And it was just understanding what it was, and then being able to communicate that with him. And I was like, well, how am I going to tell him that I experienced such a thing if I didn't even know that I experienced such a thing? Like, I felt like people would think it was a lie, because like, oh, how do you not know? But again, it was huge. And going through that, and the fact that, like he said, porn was so normal to him, it played a role into that trauma that I had from a kid. And I grew up very angry. I was so angry. I was a very angry kid. My brother passed away when I was 5, and my family, we all thought that I was angry because of him, because I would always cry out to him. But because my memories of him, they were just so pure, because I was 5. So he's the only person that I really have just very vague memories, and they're all good. So he was the person I cried out for. He was the man I cried out for. Not that my dad was absent, not that my dad wasn't there. My dad was like beyond there for a little girl, for me. And it's not even something that was their fault. Like, my parents, didn't take care of me or anything like that. Like, no, I was always very well guarded. But things happen, things just happen. And that was something that really affected me. And I'm sorry I went into like a long tangent, but it was that brokenness. Like, when I found out in my journal, I broke, my whole world broke. Everything that I knew just broke right before me. And I was like, if I don't continue, how am I going to be pieced back together? If I don't keep going, I'm just going to suffer for the rest of my life, So it was like, either go through the pain now or live with it forever. And it was, there was no question. Just go through it. Just deal with it. And I didn't like that. I was uncomfortable. I don't like pain. I'd rather run away from it. But that type of pain, I couldn't run away from.
Breakthroughs.
And this was a lot of work. You gave us the condensed version of this, but this was week after week after week.
Yeah.
Pages after pages after pages of specific incidents over and over and over again, from the beginning all the way through. And she didn't leave one stone unturned. So, and what you just said, Jocelyn, was just so powerful. It's like, I'm either going to go in there now and I'm going to experience it now. And I always say that, the healing is found in the pain, and like you said, if we don't go into the pain and allow it to be healed, allow God to heal us, basically, then it's always going to be stalking us.
Yeah.
And when it stalks us, it affects us negatively. It keeps us traumatized. It ruins our relationships. It does all this damage as we keep moving forward. So Matt and Vanessa, have any comments at that point or questions?
I just want to say thank you for sharing. We were both emotional over here, and I can in no way relate to a majority of the things that you were talking about. And I'm just so sorry, but I'm so happy that you were able to kind of just find your peace and your healing. I think something that I definitely can relate to, though, and would like to speak to is that journey of finding your worth and discovering that you really didn't know who you were. Just because I know that that's even something that I have dealt with, and it's a journey that I'm definitely on myself. And I just would like to know really what that looked like for you once you kind of realize, like, hey, I thought I knew who I was, or I didn't even know that that was a thing, and now you are in search of that. Like, what did that look like for you?
It took a lot of praying. It took a lot of just figuring out, like, why was this done to me? Why? Like, what was the point of it? And not why in an accusatory way, more so like, what's the purpose behind it, and learning the purpose behind it. Not that there was purpose behind it. I don't really know how to explain it, but like, right, we all have our journey for a reason, mm-hmm. and we either use it for good or we use it for bad. And figuring out how to use it for good helped me figure out who I was meant to be as a woman, as a person. And finding my worth was also what am I worth to him? And even the fact that after being together for 7 years, and about to get married, and when Bill brought up the purity covenant, seeing him cry afterwards, after we hung up with Bill, like, he didn't know that I was hearing him cry because he was in the other room, but I heard him because he was like bawling, right? And the whole thing is to hear something hurt him so much, but he didn't hesitate to agree to do it. And this is before he even knew that I had gone through whatever I went through. But so to see that someone was willing to do that for me showed me that someone thought I was worth something. Mm. So that was big for me. And then to find out, okay, what Bill kept telling me, like, you're worthy, you have purpose. And I'm like, well, a lot of the uncovering for me was, what does worthy mean? Mm. What does that even mean? So I was just like, worthy how? Worthy to who? And I didn't know there was a higher power. I didn't know there was anything of that sort. So uncovering was a lot of praying, turning to the Bible, understanding my role as a woman, reading the books that Bill recommended, the homework, having conversations with him, and understanding his love and his care for me, that I'm actually important and I'm not territory. Mm-hmm. I'm not a thing to just kind of be dealt with, was something that really uncovered me as a woman, and not as just a being that's just here just to be here,
Yeah, this is huge stuff. That you went through. This was just a huge dramatic transformation, and still is. As we get closer down the road, I want to talk about where we wound up last night and like the fruit of all of that, if you will, and how that looks today. But Jocelyn, if you would talk a little bit about the parental inversion that happened along that way too.
Oh yeah. I remember when we first started with you, that was another thing that I was going through a lot. So to uncover this, and then also having the parental inversion, like at that time, my parents were going through a lot of strife, and they were not doing so well. They were in the middle of kind of, you know, splitting their marriage, separating, and my mom had a lot of childhood trauma herself, and I always knew that, but I didn't understand how it affected us as adults. So my mom's father was an alcoholic, and a very heavy alcoholic, and she went through a lot, and I didn't understand her. And I couldn't understand her, and I was always like, why does she do what she do, right? And then going through what my parents were going through, I saw her kind of go back to kind of being a child again. And not saying that, oh, my mom acted like a kid. No, she didn't. But she was very dependent on me, you know? And that's what I mean by like being a child again, was like a kid is always looking for their comfort in a person, right? And that person is usually their mom or their dad or that person that's closest to you, right? So, and I would always find that I was that person that my mom would turn to. But why? Because if you went, my dad owned a building, and if you went into that building, everybody in that building was in turmoil. Everyone, my brother upstairs, my brother downstairs, their relationships, my parent, it was just chaotic. So everybody turned to Jaslyn. I was the mediator. I was the pillar of the entire family. And it was something that weighed heavily on me. And the parental inversion was something very big on me as well. Like I was taking care of everyone. And I was especially taking care of like making sure that my mom's sanity was okay. And I became I felt that I became everyone's guardian. And the thing is that there were kids in the mix, like, you know, a 13-year-old to, I think, 5-year-olds. So I was taking care of adults, and I was taking care of kids, and I was trying to take care of myself, trying to take care of us, finding out I just had, you know, gone through this trauma my whole life, which is affecting me. I can't talk, you know, to my soon-to-be husband. I can't even talk to my family because nobody communicated. It was just chaotic. And so the parental aversion, the uncovering of the sexual abuse, then there was even more in that. There was just so much like that. Those aren't even some of the points, and I'm drawing a blank right now. But there was even more to that. There was so many other points that were uncovered. Like I feel like Edwin and I kind of do a really good job. Well, not a really good job, but really good job at hitting almost like if you want to talk about like problems and trouble, like, oh, we'll probably be like, oh yeah, we did that. Yep, we've been through that. Yep, we've been through that. Like we can kind of put our hands in a lot of pots. Not to say that that's a good thing, but that's how much baggage we've uncovered that we didn't even know was affecting us, and that was out there, you know. And I brought all of that into my relationships. I brought all of that into what I expected from Edwin, you know. And since I was always the pillar of everybody else, I expected to be the pillar here. And when he, like you mentioned, Matt, his independence, because he was so independent, I didn't know how to handle it because everybody depended on me. So I'm like, if he doesn't depend on me, he's gonna leave. So I need to make him want to depend on me. And on top of that, if I also don't give him what he wants as a woman, he's gonna leave. So it was always, he had this mindset that I was gonna leave. And I always had this mindset, if I don't do right, then he's gonna leave. But on top of that, we always spoke about we're never gonna leave. So it was just like everywhere, you know.
One thing I'll point out, and Matt, then pick up after this, is that as a choleric, and you know, Matt, you know this too, all the clerics know this. They do stuff because they can, and Jocelyn, you could. And so even though you were broken and even though the abuse was going on and everything else, you could do it because innately you could do it. You said earlier, as a kid, what do you know? All of this is just being put on you. So we just do what we do.
Yeah.
Right. So you could, and like all these scripts, like this is why I wanted you guys to share, because like you said, you dragged all of that into the relationship. And that's what we call baggage, of course. And then you get into the relationship, you start unpacking your baggage, and then everything starts to fall to pieces. And that's when we started working on it. So go ahead, Matt.
Wow. Something that you guys were talking about is, and Jocelyn, something that you were talking about is how you didn't even realize how much, how many things you were actually holding on to from your childhood. Like you didn't even know. And that was something I experienced when I went to Bill. I was like, Bill, like, I don't really, like everyone's cool. Like, I'm okay with everybody. Like nobody's, and as I started to write it down, it was like, holy smokes. Like I'm carrying some heavy stuff. And I know a big part of our journey, and especially, I know mine at the beginning with Bill, was that forgiveness part of the journey where I actually had to go on a process of genuinely forgiving all those people and all those situations so I could take it off of me and stop carrying it around. And with all the things that you guys went through, I could only imagine what that journey went like, right after you guys journaled and went through that process. So if you could both share, because we all have baggage. Everybody that goes through this process has the people they need to forgive, situations that they're holding on to for years and years. Can you both share a little bit about your journeys, maybe forgiving people in your life and as well as each other, and to how important that was, to kind of release that from your hearts?
Yeah. It's amazing because also like that forgiving and going back to forgive is really what helped me understand, was laying my life down for her and be able to help her on that journey, because everything she just shared before, definitely I wasn't helping. I was adding more to it because in the other end, I was basically demanding what she was trying to work on, and things along those lines. But yeah, I had to go back and definitely, forgive my parents what they left, because even to today, like I watch a movie and it has to do with somebody leaving, I just start bawling. Like, I don't know why. And I'm like, I mean, I know why now, but like before I didn't, so I had to go back and definitely forgive them, have a conversation with them and let them know, how I felt and how I feel now. And also because after that, I realized that my family, we never say I love you to each other until I started working with EIS. And before that, I remember my childhood. Before they left, they came over here. We used to have, lunch together, dinner together on the same table. I love you to each other, regular hugs, and everything became like so weird here, after we actually came. And, going through that, letting them know how we felt and seeing like then after that, we were able to say, I love you. It was just an amazing, turnaround per se. Also like how to forgive my brother, definitely had a conversation with him too. He was a teenager, he didn't know, but sometimes leaving me alone in the house, like when my grandparents weren't there, and let's say they came to the States as well, my brother, was partying, going around, and I was in the house alone, and also my sister, because it was three of us. I'm one of five, but it was three of us that got left behind over there. And my sister, from the day one, she did not live with us. She was always she stayed with someone that we wish we could stay, but we couldn't. There was no space. So I was always, mad at her because she went to a good spot. We had to go around to places that we didn't want to go, and definitely forgive myself for other things as well that I was doing because I was angry, and that was a good exercise, going through that with Bill, and you know, in some sense also that Mali as well, that helped me big time.
Yeah, definitely. Forgiveness was huge. And one thing that I can say is that to forgive, you don't have to forgive once. To go through that process of forgiveness, it was like, how do I forgive? You know, and at first I was like, I never felt, I never felt such a strong feeling than I did once I uncovered all of that, and I didn't know how to forgive. Then I just got really angry. I got so angry that it was like to the point where, you know, we couldn't talk. Like I'll never forget this. One day I was heading to the kitchen. I think I said this in my last testimony. I was heading to the kitchen, and Edwin saw me going to the kitchen, and he asked me. He's like, "Oh, babe, can you just bring me a bottle of water?" And I turned around, and if looks could kill, you know, and all he did was ask me for a bottle of water. I'm heading in that direction, and that was when I caught myself like, I can't keep doing this. So the forgiveness part of it, I had to forgive over and over and over and over and over again. And I only did that, you know, I believe in God. So I only did that with his help. And I had to forgive myself because I got angry at myself for not knowing. I got angry at myself I felt guilty. I felt guilty. Wow, I let this happen. You know, like how did I let this happen? You know, so having to forgive that myself over, like he said, right? Having to forgive everyone else also for not knowing what they were doing to hurt me, right? He didn't know what he was doing to hurt me, so I had to forgive him. You know, my parents didn't know that I was hurting so much. I moved out because I felt like I had to leave for my sanity when I moved out of my parents' house. And they couldn't understand why I left, you know, and I was like, oh, it's just time. But I couldn't do it anymore. So I had to forgive them. I had to forgive my mom for her not understanding why she did certain things. And going through all of this allowed me to really realize, okay, all of this is happening because of their childhood trauma too. So it helped us understand people better.
Yeah.
It helped us understand that I may not know what your childhood was like, but I know that you may not be like that because you want to be, but because something may be triggering it. And fast forwarding to where we are, like let's say even today, we worked on it a lot. And to this day, sometimes the topic of forgiveness comes up, you know, and you just have to forgive over and over. And I know that we were talking to Bill about it, and it has changed so much, like going through this process, knowing my worth, him understanding what affected me and what affects me, and him not going there, you know, placing the boundaries and respecting certain things, and vice versa. Yeah, the love and respect, and vice versa. It allowed us, like, so before it was like, all right, regardless of which, I could have done whatever I did, but it was like it was an insatiable unsatisfaction that Edwin had, right? And it was because there was no emotional intimacy, and yeah, we loved each other. We were together. We were in it for, like, you know, in it to win it, whatever, ride or die hard. But we didn't know what emotional intimacy was, and that comes from a deeper place, you know, that comes from really being emotionally connected, right? You're my yin to my yang.
Yeah, I didn't know what that was.
We
guys.
didn't.
Like, oh, honestly, sorry, man. Oh, honestly, like, I was basically forcing myself, you know, forced her to be with me, you know, and I didn't know 100% what I was doing, and that's what the process has helped me big time. Understand that I needed to learn how to be, you know, make a connection with her, and not just forcing it. Because, like we were talking about before, what I was doing was, even I was forcing her, and then I didn't feel anything afterwards because it was forced. So, the next day, I was just feeling the same way, and when I finally got to understand what laying my life down for her means, it's like now it's just so awesome. And it's not like such a crazy need. And when it's there, it's just amazing because we have a connection and it just feels great.
Yeah. And I can say that, like, one day I had asked him, like, what was the change? Like, it was always constant, like and then one day I noticed, like, it started to slow down, and he was like, I'm just satisfied. And it was like, well, it's because we were emotionally connected and we were emotionally, that it's not such need all the time. And also because I learned his needs and he learned my needs. And as well, that it allowed me to connect even to myself, to who I was, and certain things that used to make me uncomfortable. Like, it's going to make me a little uncomfortable to even say this now, but I didn't like to initiate. It was something very uncomfortable for me. I didn't know why. It comes from the sexual trauma. And now he doesn't make me feel uncomfortable about that. So now it's easy. It's something easy for me to do. So our sexual life has improved tremendously. Not in a sense where it's like, it's just so much, it's peaceful.
It feels like a marriage.
It's just, it's not like
true marriage.
Anything is forced. And if days go by, it's okay. It's not like we're fighting for that. And it's just like, it's so,
before we were fighting for it.
It's so peaceful. And now even having, like, we're expecting our first baby. We're 7 months pregnant. And, it's such a different journey. And to be able to say that this journey, even of being pregnant, it's been like, it's been great. And we're not perfect. We've got a lot of work to do still. We're not perfect. But to be honest, I can say that the peace that we have throughout going through everything, going through the process, and knowing that our baby's going to come into a peaceful household. I can tell you 3 years back, I don't know that I would have been feeling the way that I feel now, bringing a child into this world.
Mm-hmm.
We give you long answers. So sorry.
Wow. I mean, that was amazing.
Don't
That was my next
apologize.
question. That's
Yeah, I'm like,
unbelievable. Good for you guys. Congratulations.
So happy for you guys.
Yeah, we did sit down, at the beginning. We used to sit down with Bill like every week, and then, a year or so after, definitely we move on to all the time sitting down with him, even implemented Amali sitting down. So we made sure that we were always booking them.
Yeah.
Because we wanted to, to get to this point, and we're still working to get to even better.
And to this day, to be honest, even though, like, our relationship has improved so much and our communication, like, we can actually communicate now without, having to go head to head. It happens sometimes, it does, but we can come back to a place and understand what happened. But even though we're there, we don't feel like we're done. We're never done. Like, we know Bill's extremely busy, but every now and then when he's like, I have a slot, I'm like, Bill has a slot. Let's go. And it's just because we never want to stop. We never want to stop being hungry to grow and say, oh, okay, we got this. We're good. Because there are times that we think we're good. And then when we come and speak, it's like, oh, well, I guess we're not good. Maybe there's something else that we need to work on. But to see, to never stop going, even if we feel like everything is in its place. No, we know we still need that guidance, even if it's once a month, once every other month, whatever it is, just to make sure that we're still heading in the right direction.
You said last night that the current, like, when you get triggered now, instead of going head to head, and fighting about stuff, it's just another opportunity to share, like, okay, why are we doing this?
Yeah.
Or you can recognize the triggers instead of just being triggered by it, so you can say, okay, wait a minute, this is this. We don't need to be triggered by that, and take responsibility for those things.
Yeah. Yeah. And instead of what we used to do all the time is, well, you're doing this, or, why'd you do this? You said this, you did that. It was always like this pointing back and forth. And now what we take the time to do it all the time, it was unbelievable. But now what we take the time to do is, all right, maybe like, all right, you said this, but why did it bother me? You know, was it me? Is it, you know, was there no reason to be bothered, or was it the way you said it, or was it, and we can talk about it and look at ourselves first before having to necessarily point the finger and say, you're the reason why I'm uncomfortable. No, it made me uncomfortable for a reason. Was I in the wrong? And for me, saying sorry was not a thing. He was like, did you say sorry? And I'll be like, you know, I didn't mean it. You know, I wouldn't say sorry. I'll be like, you know, I didn't mean it. You know. But now it's like, no, now if I need to say sorry, I don't have to wait for him to ask for it. Or I can admit when I'm wrong and I can recognize it because I'm looking at myself first before I say, you know what, you're the problem. It's like, no, maybe I'm the problem. Was I the problem? Was I the problem? And did I cause this? Or if I don't even know, I'll ask them, look, what was it that bothered you? Okay, this is what bothered me. We're not always going to agree. That's one thing that we've realized, that we're two different individuals. We're not always going to agree, but how can we come to an agreement?
Find a middle ground. Yeah. And one thing that affected us also was that we came from two different, you know, kind of backgrounds or not backgrounds per se. What's the word? Upbringing, culture. So like, you know, a lot of things that we thought we were saying the same thing. Let's say in Spanish, it was definitely two different things, you know. We don't agree. Yeah. So we used to argue until we could agree.
Yes, because I'm Hispanic as well, but I'm a Jerseyan Hispanic. I was born here. He's from actually the country. So, you know, so even though we have similar backgrounds, it's different.
Yeah.
Wow. So awesome. There's so much in this today. This was
part two.
Yeah, really. I was thinking the same thing.
It's so funny because our conversations always go in different directions, and it's like there's so much, you know, that even we spoke about yesterday. That it's just so funny how it's like we thought you said we're not going to be able to get it all in, and I was like, oh.
The thing though is that you have, you know, and I mentioned this earlier, and when we met last week, I said I sense such a great peace about you guys.
Yeah.
You know, and a settledness in your hearts, and those that may remember Ed and Jocelyn, you know, a few years ago, when we got together, it wasn't that way at all.
No,
there was always their countenance was kind of like at unrest at best, if not troubled, you know, or you know, frustrated or angry or wrestling through something else, which is a part of the picture. I get it, you know, but that's what I mentioned earlier is like the fruit of doing the work. You're looking at, you're hearing it, you're observing it with your own eyes, you know, and this is what it's all about. You know, you're not just going to get fixed up or getting the other person fixed up or just start learning how to live your best life now. And then real quick, got like 2 minutes left, but one thing I do want to tie in is like how this has worked in terms of doing business together. Because we mentioned last night, if it doesn't happen at home and in the nucleus of the relationship itself, it ain't never going to happen in the business.
Yeah, if the home team is not right, then nothing else is going to be right, you know. And that was something we heard over years, and we were like, oh, you know, we can still do what we got to do, even though we having problems. But it just, hey, you know, they don't, you know, how you lead by example. So if we're not right together, the home team is not right. How can we, you know, help our team? How can we lead our team? You know, it's just not going to work.
Yeah.
So that was a big part also why we said, you know, we need to work on everything that we need to work.
Yeah. And also we would put the business before we put each other, and realizing that, you know, the business isn't going to keep us together. We could have all the money, we could have all the things, we could have everything. But if we're not, you know, eye to eye, or if we're not emotionally there, present, you know, or whatever it is, like business is business. Like it's not going to keep us together, right? So we realized that by us putting ourselves first is what's going to help the business and the life that we want that's what's going to help it flourish.
God family business.
Right.
And because of that, it is why we were able to, become leaders in Henry and Sandra's team, and being able to allow us to lead our team because we were working on these things, and they can see the transformation that we were doing. And that's how eventually our team, we're able to grow, and we have people growing as well because of that.
So awesome. Thank you guys. Powerful
Thank
tonight.
you.
Really powerful.
Thank you. Sorry, we barely left any for you guys to ask many questions.
We could have spoke
This
all
was
the way
great.
through.
I
and it
need
would
4
have been
parts, Bill.
amazing.
So let's set it up.
Yeah, we'll definitely have to invite you guys back for another round. There's no question about that. But I will, as always, make those couple of announcements for to kind of close us out. I have the banner up on the screen there. If people watching, and even if you're not watching and you're watching and you know some people who, man, I'd really love to help this couple or help these individuals, send them to us. That's what we're here for. We're here to help you, just as you heard today, to really uncover all the junk that's inside of you so you can be free from that and learn who you really are, as a human being, as a person. And then how is that going to translate out into your relationship, your job, your businesses, and so on and so forth. So we welcome you to do that, of course. And then there's this awesome book called The Process. Shameless plug. Really outlines the process. So if you're interested in learning more about what you heard in action today, because these guys are such a great example of actually working the process. And again, I am working on the next book, which is a guided journal and devotional. You actually have your companion to walk through an entire year of working this thing through.
We're ready for it, Bill.
Marie's book called No More Anxiety, which you can also pick up on Amazon. It's also a workbook, which I really love. She really gets very, very practical. Lots of room to write in there. You probably can't see that, but I can see it. And so I suggest you pick that up too. And once again, thank you guys so much for just opening up your hearts. And we're just going to pray that everybody gets touched and runs away with this, from this, with just so much enrichment in their hearts and stuff to plug into their own lives.
Well, thank you for having us.
Amen.
Really, thank you so much.
Yeah, for sure. Don't just invest in a wedding. Invest in your marriage with professional like EIS.
That's right.
Don't just plan a big wedding, plan a big marriage, right?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
All right. Well, listen, love you guys. Matt and Vanessa, thank you so much, as always, for helping us out.
Of course, thank you.
We'll be back next week with Anita Aeronautici, one of our EIS counselors. Looking forward to it.
Awesome.
But for now,
Yeah.
Thank you. Love you guys.
thank you. Love you guys.
Take care.
Love you guys.